Welcome to Stock Therapy with Penny Queen. Today I have David Bakke, a Medicenna investor, on with me, and we're going to talk about his platform and the perspective on Medicenna from that. But before we start, David, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Penny. It's great to
Yeah,
be
I
here.
I am really excited. We've talked a lot in the past, and uh, before we get started, I want you to introduce yourself and explain how you got to where you are in terms of Medicenna.
Sure. So I basically leveraged a 28-year career of client strategy, sales, customer success, enterprise analytics, and automation, ultimately running 10, $20 million Fortune 500 accounts in IT services in the RPA space to build what I call PRISM-11. It's an AI-augmented research framework and competitive intelligence system that provides deep real-time analysis, blending systems thinking with translational immunology. And it's for a multi-audience perspective.
Okay, so for now, I understand that there are people who invest at a lot of different levels, and biotech is a very complicated field where you truly to understand the investment and to have the best risk profile, you need to dig a lot deeper. So I've put out a couple articles and I've definitely done videos and interviews on Medicenna, but you have put out so much information, and it seems to me that you have a different way of viewing the data than probably even the company themselves does. So for anybody who is just investing on the surface of Medicenna, this video should provide a much better deep dive into everything that's going on behind the scenes. And I hope that you'll take this and you'll go ahead and start reading David's all of his Substack posts, and then you'll have a very much better idea of what's going on with Medicenna, and I believe a lot more conviction. But David, for you, can you explain to people what MDNA11 is doing inside patients' body that other cancer treatments aren't?
Yeah, from a PRISM-11 perspective and the research that I've done, MDNA11 repairs the immune system's command center, and that's the lymph node. Most cancer drugs try to push T cells harder. MDNA11 rebuilds the machinery that makes good T cells in the first place. If you imagine the immune system as an army, and I think Dr. Merchant used this analogy in your interview, and maybe he used the Navy SEALs analogy in another interview he did. But others, other drugs dump fuel into whatever soldiers you already have. But if your position is overrun, dropping supplies to the enemy doesn't do anybody any good except the enemy. And MDNA reopens the barracks, retrains the soldiers, retrains new soldiers, fixes the communication lines, and restores the supply routes. It creates fitness, not just force. That's why it works in patients who have no soldiers left to amplify.
Right. So can I ask what made the science click for you?
So for me, it was the moment I read that Novartis lymph node paper and ran it through PRISM 11. And I ran it against our entire corpus. Suddenly thousands of papers, patient trajectories, and mechanistic data sets snapped into alignment. Every meaningful MDNA11 responder had crossed the same sequence of lymph node repair steps, and that pattern wasn't showing up for any other IL-2 program. That was the moment it stopped being a promising drug and became a coherent biological frame.
So most people are only reacting to the data that comes out every few months. We're seeing how many responders we have, just complete responders, partial response, and that it's valuable. It's very valuable data. And again, we have more information coming day after tomorrow, December 10th. This is the big ESMO conference, and I couldn't be more thrilled about it. But I think what you've done is built something that allows you to look a lot deeper into the data that has come out, and you're seeing things that I think people on the inside of the company are able to see if they're looking in those areas. But let's talk about December 10th and the ESMO conference. What do you think is coming?
Yeah, I think we're going to get, good data that's on the updated combination trial. We're going to get more durability data from a mono and combo perspective. Maybe we're going to get some biomarker alignment. ESMO is where clinical anecdotes either fall apart or solidify into patterns. If the pattern holds, and I think the abstract shows that it does, it's fitness first, response second, and it confirms the mechanistic thesis that PRISM-11 has been running with.
Okay, so what headline are you hoping to hear?
So definitely more CRs and more PRs. We already saw a different tumor type achieve a PR in the abstract, which is exciting.
Yeah.
If the data continues to build off their previous success, especially if we see responses deepen as lymph node repair progresses, that would tell me the biology is unfolding exactly as predicted. And more importantly, it would set expectations for what a phase 2 and ultimately a phase 3 should deliver.
Okay, then what would disappoint you?
Mainly too little follow-up to see the full repair response arc. I've talked about, and PRISM-11 has talked about, MDNA11 is a timing-driven drug. If the snapshot is too early, the coherence PRISM-11 has extracted, meaning the mechanistic sequence that links lymph node repair to clinical response simply wouldn't be visible yet. I've spoken with clinicians and researchers who worry that, even under iRECIST, some patients, may be discontinued too soon if they don't respond quickly. But with a drug that requires immune system rebuilding, early removal can create an incomplete picture of what it's actually capable of.
Can you explain lymph node targeting simply?
Yeah, so the lymph node is the factory where anti-cancer T cells are made. Other drugs go to the tumor. MDNA11 goes to the factory and fixes it. And why this is kind of interesting, I did a little research, over the weekend. 80% of the drugs that are coming to market are what I call destroyer drugs. Only 3 to 5% of these oncology drugs, like MDNA11, are what I call builder drugs. And that makes MDNA11 and makes Medicenna, incredibly unique in my eyes.
All right. What do the remarkable patient responses tell you?
I think they tell us two things. First, the repair theory, meaning the idea that you must fix the lymph node before the immune system can generate durable anti-tumor activity. That's correct. Responders all follow the same, biological sequence. I think the second thing would be that the system isn't dead. It's dormant. These patients had exhausted every option. But once you restore fitness inside the lymph node, their immune system can wake back up and start doing what it was originally designed to do.
Can you walk us through PRISM-11 and how you weigh cohorts and pathways?
Yeah, so PRISM-11, they treats each cohort not as an isolated data point, but as a chapter in a single mechanistic story. It looks at fitness markers, repair thresholds, timing curves, regulatory positioning, indication-specific unmet need, historical success rates for similar mechanisms. PRISM-11 merges that clinical reality with biological inevitability. It shows where MDNA11 has already de-risked itself and where the biggest regulatory value lies. It integrates clinical data, mechanistic pathways, timing sequences, regulatory frameworks, and historical comparators. I've been trying to figure out a way to articulate, what it is from a relatable perspective. And, in having conversations with PRISM-11, one of the couple things that came out of that discussion is it's built on 200,000 to 300,000 science years and 30,000 to 40,000 papers ingested via direct reading, and from deep query consensus app polls. Most recently, one aspect that's been interesting is that it came up with this reality for itself that it compresses the immune system's rule book into, does MDNA11 sequence match what the lymph node biology must do? And the answer is yes. I'd like to show a graphic, PRISM-11 created just for your audience. Most cancer drugs, like we talked about, that attack the tumor directly. How PRISM-11 interprets what MDNA11 is doing, which is something very different and much more powerful. It repairs the immune system first, and the repaired immune system almost becomes the drug. The graphic you're looking at is a visual ladder, and it's showing the order in which the lymph node and the tumor immune ecosystem repair themselves once MDNA11 is introduced. Each step builds on the one below it, like restoring a power grid from the generator outward. The key idea is potency comes after repair. Repair is what unlocks the PD-1 pathway. Here's the walkthrough from the bottom to the top. You've got the rhythmic pSTAT5 activation. That starts the immune engine, the immune repair engine. You've got the TCF1 progenitor renewal. That's building the team again. The DCT synapse repair reformation, that reconnects the wiring. And then you've got the chemokine recentering, which is fixing the traffic signals. Then we move to stromal reset, which is repairing the framework. And then we move to the metabolic reset, which is turning the lights back on. And then the last piece is the micro TLS emergence, which is the local immune bases being rebuilt. This is how PRISM-11 has leveraged its translational research engine to create a graphic, the classic picture which is worth 1,000 words. Putting it all together, this is what unlocks PD-1. Checkpoint inhibitors like Keytruda assume the immune system is fit, connected, routed, metabolically functional, and able to respond. But in most solid tumors, especially the ones that are encountered in the patients in these early trials, this definitely isn't true. The system is sabotaged. The ladder shows that MDNA11 repairs the sabotage in a sequence. And once you cross, that repair threshold, suddenly PD-1 responsiveness returns. Tumors that were invisible become visible to the immune system again. Deep and durable responses become possible. And this is why, for me, those rollover patients are gold. This is why the model ends with repair precedes potency. MDNA11 doesn't just boost the immune system. It restores the immune infrastructure required for potency and can also reactivate refractory PD-1 patients.
That's gorgeous. Just gorgeous. Can you explain to people what rollover patients are?
So these are patients that previously were on a PD-1, maybe Keytruda could have been another one, and they basically went refractory, or the drug stopped working for them, and so they were out of options, and so they entered a trial, and they went on MDNA11, and so they started with MDNA11 to see if it would work, and then for those 3 patients currently, Keytruda was reintroduced, or a PD-1 was reintroduced. And that's where I believe it was the gastric patient. The gastric patient actually had a 40% tumor burden increase on MDNA11. But when Keytruda was reintroduced, that patient's tumor burden shrunk back down to 3%. And so it'll be interesting to see what kind of if there's any updates on that patient at ESMO as well, because that is an amazing opportunity for patients who, when you go refractory on Keytruda, you rapidly start running out of options.
All right, David, you've described MDNA11 as a de-risked asset masquerading as a moonshot. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember. So this is a microcap biotech, you know, and it got thrown out with the 2021 biotech collapse. And, you know, the pivot from MDNA 55 to MDNA 11, you know, I think contributed to the misunderstanding, you know, even though it was absolutely the right strategic call. You know, MDNA 11 now has mechanistic validation, clinical validation, durability, uh, safety, repeatability, you know, even just as crucially, if not most important, deepening responses. You know, the market cap looks like a moonshot. You know, the biology looks de-risked.
So I am at my core a microcap investor. And I just have to say that the volatility the microcaps provide, if you are prepared for it, is ideal because we look at Medicenna, and if anybody has done their research, you know, microcaps are very difficult to invest in. It's something like 1 in 17 is successful. But unlike other companies where you have execution and all these other risks, it comes down to the science. And if you spend the time to research the science, I mean, there are reasons that biotechs fail outside of science, but in general, when the science is good, the results will be good, and the pathway to success becomes much more clear. Like it's illuminated with every sequential piece of data. So for me, yeah, the company was tossed aside with so many other biotechs, especially in the microcap space, but the amount of opportunity that provided. I think my last big chunk of Medicenna was bought at something ridiculous like 43 cents.
Oh,
Right. I
wow.
mean, and that was, I mean, it's a test of conviction to go, okay, the data is telling me one thing, the price is telling me another. So I, I honestly love that that happened. And I'm sorry to know that I'm holding shares that belong to other investors at some point. But, you know, when you really dig into the data, your confidence level increases and your success level increases. So, you know, I'm happy to have people out here like you that are truly, truly digging into it. And the IL-2 space is very interesting. How do you think investors should think about other IL-2 competitors?
I, I think the main way for me is think of them as different design philosophies. Most competitors engineered creative and in some cases flawed ways to avoid the toxicity of alpha biased IL-2 while trying to safely activate whatever T cells were left. Most of those approaches also they focus on the tumor microenvironment. MDNA11 is upstream. It was designed to reside in the draining lymph node and restore fitness and fix the system that actually makes anti-tumor T cells. That's a completely different strategy.
So, what is Merck's involvement signal to you?
I don't think big pharma, they don't chase anecdotes. They chase mechanistic leverage. If MDNA11 reliably revives PD-1 activity in refractory settings through the lymph node repair, that becomes strategically important. And remember, Merck runs hundreds of keynote trials. The fact that MDNA11 is in that universe, you know, you add in the recent news of Medicenna's Neosite trial over in Italy with BMS assets. I mean, that suggests the large players understand the upstream leverage here, and maybe eventually feel urgency as the biology becomes unavoidable.
What milestones do you think matter in 2025?
So for me, I'm looking forward to, these full cohort readouts, durability curves, any biomarker validation. Dr. Merchant and the Medicenna team articulating, the accelerated approval possibilities, which they've already touched upon. What kind of other expansion cohorts might come about, or registration trial approaches, but also you know the NHP data for MDNA11. That'll be very interesting.
Okay. What do you think new investors in Medicenna should focus on?
Focus on MDNA11 restores the lymph node, which is the body's T cell factory. Repair precedes potency. No other IL-2 is designed to do that. Once you see and really dig into that repair ladder graphic, the mechanisms and the clinical responses line up perfectly. Showing the repair ladder graphic and internalizing that graphic, you'll really get the power of the reinforcement of the mechanistic inevitability of MDNA11.
Perfect. All right. Is there anything else you want to leave investors with? I mean, it's right now, it's Monday morning. I'm going to try and get this out so people have a couple of days to listen to it before the ESMO information comes out. I am very excited to see how this changes the landscape of the data that we have so far. Any thoughts you have there?
I think I would like to see, you know, anything that could kind of broaden and add depth. So if there's new endometrial cancer patients that we get data there that reinforces what was extremely promising from the AACR data. And then, if Dr. Merchant shows additional data around those two new PRs, which I think was a TMBH breast and a neuroendocrine patient, those are new, new tumor types that are showing responses from the previous data. And so, any others that fall into that category, are extremely interesting to me, but also, allows me to kind of apply that validation lens through PRISM-11 to understand and kind of do that constant reinforcement of, personally my investment thesis, which is ultimately, derived by validating the science.
I'll say the new tumor types. Anytime there's a new tumor type, I'm grateful that more people, are going to have more options. But from an investment side, total addressable market grows every new tumor type. That's bottom line. I mean, if we're here about an investment, the investment case gets better and better and better. So I am ready and waiting for the ESMO data. So, all right. Thank you for taking the time today. As always, I'm going to link your Substack below in the description here so people can take a look and read through. And your For Dummies series has been great. I like that, there's a lot of information here, and I consider myself a pretty solid biotech investor, but I mean, I have to research some of the information that comes out, and I'm like, I think I know what this means, but do I really? So that latest series has been great to like break it down in pieces that are easier to consume and understand. So thank you for all the work you've done. It's always great having other investors out there actually digging deep and trying to add to the body of knowledge. So thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks again. Enjoyed the conversation today.
Thank you, David.